We're still on the coronavirus. Some analysts and economies are beginning to downgrade China's GDP growth forecast for 2020 as the coronavirus outbreak hits the world's second largest economy. Interestingly, China is not in this alone. Last week, the World Health Organization declared a public health emergency of international concern amid rising fears the virus could reach countries with weak healthcare system. So the question now is, how prepared are the African countries? What are the economic implications for Africa? Now, I'm being joined by an international consultant and the CEO, Espera Global Corporation, Dr. Glenn Prince. I'll be joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Abi.
Thank you very much, Chimize.
So should African countries be worried over this coronavirus at this time?
Well, Chimize, I think that's a very apt question because of all the continents in the world, Africa has been a major attraction for Chinese investment in the past over a decade, or going to 2 decades now. A lot of Chinese investments and Chinese infrastructure projects and all that. So much is happening in Africa from Chinese economic go out of China strategy. So it has been a big benefit to Africa. So African countries should be worried because there's a lot of dependency on China, just as a good part of the world depends a lot on China. So Africa needs to actually start to get worried. In fact, because if, for instance, the virus, the outbreak of the coronavirus, if it escalates further, if it goes beyond the current point, it means that there'll be a whole lot of problems. You can look at, for instance, areas like aviation. Let us look at the aviation industry, in terms of traveling in and out, going to China, coming to Africa and all that. Africa's largest airline, is Ethiopian Airline. Now, the Ethiopian Airline has about five flights to China, 6 flights to China in 5 different locations within the China mainland. Okay, now these are suspended. We have Kenya Airline, which also has flights to China. These are also suspended at this point. Now, why am I talking about airlines? You talk about airlines because the movement of people, goods and services, human beings moving around is an indication of the intensity of economic activities, economic sharing, the interaction between nations in terms of economic exchange, okay, trade exchange and all that. So now for such direct flights to be suspended because of that, it means that something is happening. Cathay Pacific, which is the national airline for Hong Kong, has, going by today's news, suspended, put on compulsory unpaid leave, 27,000 workers. 27,000 workers have been told to go on compulsory unpaid leave. So what is going to happen concerning airlines in Africa, such as Ethiopian Airlines and all that? And then Ethiopia, for instance, Addis Ababa, over in the past few years, has been recorded to have gone beyond Dubai as the gateway to Africa. Dubai used to be the gateway to Africa. Now, Addis Ababa took that position because of a strategy of Ethiopian airline, various investments across the African continent, mergers and acquisitions, improvement of services and all that. And it's all 85% because of Chinese investment, Chinese tourism, Chinese activities within the African continent. So you can see that anything that happens to China will affect Africa so badly. We are not talking about the entire world now. Of course, there's a time for that. We'll talk about the impact in the United States of America, the impact in Europe, the impact in other parts of Asia and all that. That's not our focus here. But Africa, I can tell you that is a very, very direct
Now,
impact.
Dr. Abi, what should African governments be doing at a time like this. Are there lessons to be learned, particularly looking at the supply chain resilience? What can the monetary policy authorities in Africa do at this time to support?
Well, going beyond monetary policy authorities, in fact, all aspects of economic planning paradigms have to be reviewed. African countries, for instance, have to start to consider how they can be nodes of OEM, what we call OEM, original equipment manufacture. Now, let me explain that. China is the world's factory, so to say. All manufacturers, I mean, across all continents, major manufacturers, automobiles, mobile phones, electronics, all kinds, they depend on China for their original equipment. So China produces the original equipment for them, and they use it to assembly, carry out their assembly. Even South Korea, even Japan and all that, they depend a lot on China. Now, the disadvantage for Africa is that Africa is even yet to be a manufacturing location. So what it means here is African countries must start to learn how China achieved that position to be a location for original equipment manufacture. So it means that if we are not able to do that in the next few years, our dependency on the entire world, on China, will continue to increase, and it will affect African economies. African economies are too commodity dependent, just as Nigeria is commodity dependent. A lot of African countries are commodity dependent. We are yet to achieve industrial liberation. We have not achieved that. We are not there yet. So we need to start to become original equipment manufacturing nodes. In the industry parlance, we talk about original equipment manufacture as well as value-added resellers. So
all right,
original
Dr.
equipment manufacturers
Dr. Abbey.
send products, and value-added resellers put them together and produce. Yeah.
Dr. Abbey, 30 seconds. Do you see this affecting Africa growth forecast for this year?
I fear that it would, because already it's affecting Chinese growth forecast. Now, how will it affect them? Let's use Nigeria, which is Africa's largest economy, Africa's most populous country, as an indicator of this problem. At this point, we know what is happening in terms of oil price, the Brent crude and all that price. There's a lot of volatility currently on oil price. It means that if the problem of the virus continues, if it escalates, if it gets worsened, it means that the federal government of Nigeria will have to revisit its budget for 2020 because the price, the crude oil price on which the budget is predicated, will be reviewed. So, of course, automatically that will affect growth. Now, we also depended a lot on China in terms of various aspects of infrastructure, railroads, and all kinds and all that. And then China is now affected badly. So if China does not respond in line with various agreements and various plans that we have with China, if they cannot respond as a result of this problem, it means that automatically it affects everything about us. So now that is the same thing that we are happening across Africa. For instance, in other parts of Africa,
Dr.
there
Abbey,
are Chinese tourists.
Dr. Abbey, unfortunately, we really don't have much time. Yeah, we have to. There's a lot to talk about. It's a continuous conversation, but let's just hope we get this contained as soon as possible. Thank you for your time, Dr. Abbey. Dr. Glenn Abbey is a CEO of Espera Global Corporation. Well, it's on that note that we draw the curtain on today's edition of the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago.